Hello, ladies and gentlemen. So, today I'm going to just write the word date. You need to write whatever today's date is. Okay? So, what we're working on now is topic 1-2, and it's still place value. All of topic 1 is place value. And as I stated before, we need to have an essential question in mind all the time when we're working on this lesson. Okay, so our essential question this time is, how can I write a fraction as a decimal? Okay, remember, your notes need to look just like mine. Okay, now if you write a little bit smaller than me so it takes up less space, I get it, not a big deal. If you write even bigger than I do and it takes up a little more space, fine. But remember last time I told you we want that hanging indent. None of the essential question is written under the words essential question, okay? So the essential question, how can I write a fraction as a decimal? Okay, so we're going to look for key words in this essential question. Okay, so we're thinking, okay, well, I'm going to be writing, yes, kind of important, but the main thing is we're looking at comparing those two things, fractions and decimals. Okay, so as I stated before, when you get to actually come back to class, you will get this little paper. Okay, and you will glue it in your spiral. But obviously right now, you need to just write it. Okay, my apologies. So pause the video, write it down in a box like that. Try really hard, okay, so that it looks the same as mine. That's 3/10, 3/10. I don't know how easily you can see that. And then when you're finished writing this down in a box like this, push play again, okay? And we will continue. Okay, we are going to continue now. So we have our word problem, okay? So it says, Betty made 3 out of 10, or 3/10, of her shots while playing basketball. Give 3 fractions that are equivalent to this using the denominators of 20, 50, and 100. So now we need to analyze that. We need to look at that with our highlighter, and we need to pick out what we think is important. So looking at it, we say, okay, there's 2 numbers, kind of important, right? Maybe I'll zoom it up a little bit. Okay, so then we say, well, definitely 3/10 is important. Hey, we need to give 3 fractions that are equivalent to that. Hey, equivalent. We talked about that. Equa, right? Equal, same as. Okay, and look at that. There's another vocabulary word, denominator. If you don't remember, go back and look at your vocabulary. Okay, so our denominators of these 3 fractions we need to give, 20, 50, 100. Kind of important. Highlight those puppies right there. You'll find I use a lot of figurative language, phrases that sound kind of funny because they don't actually mean what you would think. So if I say highlight those puppies, I'm not saying go find your dog and put the highlighter on it. No, it just means highlight that stuff right there. Okay, if we're actually in the classroom and say we're going to watch a video, I'll ask someone to, hey, go catch the lights. Are you actually going to go, throw me the light, I'll catch it? No, it just means turn them off or turn them on. Okay, so you'll get used to hearing me say those funny little sayings, okay? So we analyze the word problem. Now we're going to break it down. The way we break it down is we have to pull over all this important information into a brace map. Kind of organizes it so it's easier to see. So the first thing is, hey, this is what I'm being asked to do. Give 3 fractions that are equivalent. Okay, so give 3 equivalent fractions using 20, 50, and, remember, and 100 in the denominator. Okay, so when we do the brace map, the very first thing that we write is what the final thing that we're being asked to do. So if we have, Alex has 2 apples in his basket and Amanda has 3 apples in her basket, how many apples altogether do they have? That's the question. That's what you write first. How many do they have altogether? You always write that first so you keep it in your head. Okay? So that is our final question. Okay? But we're remembering, keeping in our head, this is our organizer, okay, that the denominators we have to use, and yes, I'm writing it again, but it's important. The denominators are 20, 50, and 100. Okay? Now, something that's really important is our starting fraction, right? Because that is what we have to be equivalent to. So 3/10. Okay, now notice that I wrote the fraction with the slash, okay? But that's the same thing as 3 with a straight line and a 10 as the denominator, okay? It just looks a little different, takes up a little less space. Okay, so that's my brace map. Now I'm going to start working on this, okay? So I'm going to take the first number that I'm thinking about. It's 3/10, and I know it's saying equivalent, so that means equal. And I know the first denominator I need to use for the equivalent is a 20. So I'm going to put that 20 right there. Now I'm stuck. What do I do? Well, I have to figure out what the equivalent is for the numerator. So I have to ask myself, 10 times what equals 20? 10 times 2 equals 20. So whatever you do in the denominator, you must also do the exact same thing in the numerator. So we say 3 times 2. Well, 3 times 2, you should know it, 6. So there's our first part of our answer. We're good, right? So now, I've done the 20, but now I need to do 50. So I'm going to write that 3/10 again, and I'm going to put 50 as my denominator. And now I have to stop and think. How do I get an equivalent fraction of 3/10 when there's a 50 in the denominator? Well, I have to think. 10 times what is 50? Well, 10 times 5 is 50. Whatever you do in the denominator, you must do in the numerator. 3 times 5 is 15. So 3/10 is equivalent to, is equal to 15 50ths. Okay? Now, we finished with this one. I have one more to do. So, I'm going to write that 3/10 again. I'm going to do the equivalent, and I'm going to use my 100 as my new denominator. So once again, stop and think. 10 times what is 100? Well, 10 times 10. Whatever you do in the denominator, you do in the numerator. Oops. Sorry. I was looking at the number 3. Messed me up there. Oops. Okay. So 3 times 10 is 30. So 3/10 is equivalent to 30/100ths. Now, we need to take a look at this one, okay? So what we were looking at was, this is equivalent fractions, But look back at the essential question. How can I write a fraction as a decimal? So now this is what I need to work on. I've got fractions, I've got equivalent fractions, but now I need to think of a fraction as a decimal. And this is the one we are going to use, okay? So what I'm going to do is first draw a place value chart, okay? You guys have one on the back side of your whiteboards. Remember that, okay? I'm going to recreate this in the notes, okay? Just a little bit, not the whole thing. That'd be crazy, just super crazy, okay? So, let's see. We're going to have the ones, okay? Remember, you want your notes to look just like mine. Then we have the decimal. I make it huge so there's no mistaking it. We don't want it to be just a little dot on the paper that it looks like you forgot to brush some dust off of, right? Make it big, okay? And the way we read that, remember, is and, okay? So then the first spot after the decimal is your tenths. And I am going to highlight under the because it's really important that you differentiate there, okay? Now, the next spot after the tenths is your hundredths. I'm going to write it at an angle so we don't end up with a gigantic space here, okay? It's still going to be big, but it is what it is, right? Hundredths. Once again, I am underlining the TH. It's not the hundreds. This is different. This is the hundredths. Okay? So that's that place. And then now we're going to take it one more spot. Thousandths. Thousandths. Remember that TH at the end. I am recording. Okay, so highlight. Mrs. Roberts stepped in real quick. I'm going to highlight once again that TH at the end. Okay, so now we have built our place value chart. Okay, so I'm going to take that 3/10 and I'm going to put it in here. Because look at this, this is 3/10. Notice we have a tenths right there as well. Okay, so are there any ones in this number right here? No, I'll just write it over here. Are there any ones? No. This is a fraction. This is part of a whole. This is a whole that's been chopped into 10 pieces, and there are only 3 of them that we're working with. So there are no ones. And then we have the decimal. Well, how many tenths do we have? We have 3 of them. And there is our equivalent decimal. Okay? 3/10. 3/10. You read it the same way. Okay? That's what it looks like as a fraction. That's what it looks like as a decimal. Okay? So now, let's take this one. 30/100ths. Well, I'll write it right here. 30/100ths. Is there a whole number? No, it's still just part of a whole. It's a whole that's been chopped into 100, and we're dealing with 30 pieces of those 100 pieces. Okay, so let me draw a line for the next part of the place value chart. So there are no ones here, so it's 0. So let's put that decimal. We need to have a digit in every spot up to hundredths. See this? It's 100 on the bottom. So that's how we say it. So that means I need to have a number here, and I need to have a number here. Magic. The numerator has 2 numbers. And there you go. There's your fraction. That's the equivalent decimal.